Good morning and welcome back to the Beef and Barnsey and Real Talk Reviews. This morning we'll go over a couple of balls, but first, as usual, I'm Barnsey and joined by internet personality, PBA star, and Weber Cup stalwart and Liverpool fan, Beef Stew.
Hey, Chris, how are we doing this morning?
Doing fantastic. Get to talk about some of the things that I think you and I like most.
Balls.
Bowling balls.
Yeah, I'm slowly converting you into being a ball guy.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Well, having access to a few more, we'll turn you into the one in a hurry. So,
yeah, we've got the timing of this is coincidental, even though we're taking credit that it's great timing. The UC2, the Ultimate Concept 2, the new Rubicon ball is released tomorrow, and the 900 Global Reality is also released tomorrow. So it really does make it look like we planned this. Let's go with we did.
Of course we did. How could we not? How could we not? Yeah. And so we have a couple of, like you said, a couple of new ones, and these are on fairly opposite ends of the spectrum. So while both have pretty big engines in them, one seems to be very angular, and that's the one I have not thrown, but have watched a little bit. And then we have one that's kind of a heavy oil beast, and so I think we have a couple of options here for a big swath of bowlers and lane conditions.
Yeah, definitely. I think mine might be prettier. It's deep purple and a kind of a black pearl. So I went with my kind of same layout as the Rubicon, and I'm trying to figure out which way I should turn this so you can see the thing. But I had I have the mass there out on the valve. I've got a 50 by 5 by 70 layout on it. That was the same layout that I used on my Rubicon with the Rondo core. That seemed to be the most continuous. So I figured I'd go with that. I wasn't really 100% sure what to expect from it. But we've got some video footage here of the Rubicon UC2. So I'll throw that up. We'll do full screen because, why not? And give me 1 second.
Because you can.
So, yeah, this was a freshly oiled, I think it was 41-foot house shot. I've got a few shots in here. I didn't really do very much editing. I just cut out the me walking back mainly. But like you can see, the ball goes through the pins pretty nice. What I like most about it is how responsive it is to the friction. I feel like this cover in the past for me, I hadn't really found that much joy with it in the idle pearl for me personally. I felt like the idle pearl wasn't really quite strong enough for what I wanted. This, on the other hand, this is definitely strong. Way more down lane than I expected, like I was saying. Really quick motion off it. And yeah, definitely an interesting piece. Here's an RS shot with the X1. You can see how much smoother that is.
I was going to say the X1 is a really good ball in the middle of the bag. Just watching, and even off the videos already, you see the UC2 get probably 3 feet at least longer, and then make it all up on the other end. So,
yeah, definitely. This is definitely a ball on house shots that you're going to be able to really attack the dry. I used this the weekend before when we played the Players Championship on the long pattern. I was using a combination. I left the Chris Kelso 7 there. I was using a combination of the idle and an X1 And then when they started to get a little bit slow, I went to this about game 6 for something that would get up the lane a little more and have a little more pop on the carry down.
Well, I think that's a great comparison of when to use it too. So you're looking to use this more when the lanes start breaking down the front and your bigger balls start losing a little energy. Flat 10, 4-pin kind of stuff.
Tight, definitely on when we're balling on patterns. There's one here. How about this one? Yeah. How did that get back? That is the best question. I don't know. I think that was probably about 70% ball and 30% lane guy, but you know.
Yeah, I think Clint actually has this pretty well summed up a little bit between the UC2 and the reality. We have balls on each end today that are on. For Stu, the X1 is certainly a benchmark go-to throw it whenever you can ball.
Yes, definitely. The X1 reminds me most of the Alpha Crux. I know a lot of people are talking about the physics, but I never really saw the physics as a ball I could use all the time. The Alpha Crux was a ball I could, although it was asymmetrical, it almost fit in your bad like it was a symmetrical. You could pretty much use it on everything. You could change the surface, kind of get it into a lot of different spots. If we're talking about the UC2 and the X1 there, Rob, I have the UC2 as being, like Chris was saying, a definite few feet longer and way more angular down the lane. Much more of a transition ball when you're bowling there. When I used it off a regular Rubicon, I actually did a Facebook Live with Schlemmer with that. And I found that I could use the UC2 on the fresh, but I had to be way further left than with the regular Rubicon. The regular Rubicon, I could almost, like, if I got too far left and got it in the oil, it was too slow to get around the corner, but it would control the dry better. Whereas the UC2, I almost needed to be more in the oil to slow it down a little bit because it came off the dry so hard. There you go. Casey Mattingly says, I think the UC2 is a little cleaner in the middle of the lane than the Idle Pearl and much more down lane. I would say that's exactly where I see it. Yes, Casey. Somebody who obviously watches the show and some of my Instagram posts, who knew that Stu likes the X1? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Yeah, buff. Yeah, I could see that. It's been a while. I actually think that this is the closest replacement for me for the Hypercell Skid, which was one of my favorites. The Skid never really got replaced. We had a couple of different options for them, and all of those balls seem to always be, I don't know, they were like, almost felt like the cover was too strong, so they were much smoother. And then we had the Halo Pearl when that first came out. And when we first saw the Halo Pearl in Indianapolis, if I remember correctly, it seemed like it was really sharp off the lane. But then the more we got to use it, the more we saw that the Halo core was so strong that it was quite quick, but it didn't really continue around the corner. So that for me became a little bit of an issue. Like it was almost, it got too forward on a lot of patterns. So it was excellent on really long patterns, the Halo Pearl. But to use it in the kind of spots that I use the Hypercell Skid, which was one of my favorites, it never really got that point because it would kind of hook and then it wouldn't really continue as much.
So part of Real Talk and kind of how we talk about them on tour, and so you understand the same things that we understand, a lot of how we talk about different bowling balls are, from a strength standpoint, is really more about how early that ball hooks. How long does it get down there? So like this ball is actually really clean, so it gets further down the lane. But the other thing we used to describe them were response. How much does it respond to both the oil and the dry? And this UC2 is really responsive, which makes it a very angular ball and a ball that can take advantage of conditions that are broken down a little bit or a scoring pace that it's, in the medium to high range. This is the one that you can go to in those situations and really take advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, for me, this is a ball that I hadn't really had for a while. I think probably since the skid, like that ball that's super clean, but a step up from those type of balls like high road pearls and those things that are very angular, but you really need the lane to have broken down quite a bit. Whereas with this one, I think you only need just that first transition and you can get to it if you want to play that shape.
It's a ball you don't see a lot of anymore, other than AJ Chapman still likes to throw it. He throws it off his urethane, ironically.
Yeah.
But how would you compare it to a Code Black?
Fairly similar. I think that the core is a little more rounded, the Rondo core. So I think you can create more of a continuous shape. But yeah, AJ's definitely spoke about how he was excited to get that on there on the lanes and compare the two, because obviously he only has a finite number of Code Blacks left. So finding something that fits that gap, definitely, I could see that for sure. Somebody asked me, oh, here you go. Mark says one of his favorites was the skid. Still have one left on the shelf. Yeah, I actually won my last and second title with the skid on the medium pattern. It was actually a hypercell loving. I had the regular hypercell on one lane, skid on the other. UC2 is Pearl. It's E-Trax Pearl. Oh boy, Scott, wrong show. But quickly, the MVP attitude is probably a step up in terms of the core, and the cover is way stronger. Like the attitude cover is a lot stronger than the electrify covers for me.
And stronger being earlier and smoother.
Yes.
Yeah. Buff Love. There you go.
Yeah.
95 Storm Shape. Well, Stu's younger than I am, so I did throw those balls. I threw, I had the Pacific Storm, and
a lot of flare in that one.
Yeah, not a lot, but it did. That was really angular back in the day. Yeah, and then you had the what was the blue one back then? There was Thunder. There's Thunder Pros.
Thunder. Yeah, the Thunder Pearl.
Yeah. Orange pin and yellow pin ones. There's
yeah, you've already lost me and most of the viewers with that.
Yeah, those balls are from a bygone era, but when the company was starting.
So just for the numbers guys out there, the Rubicon UC2, I'm just looking at my display here. E-Trax Pearl, which was on the Idle Pearl and the Halo Pearl, Rondo Core 248, 050, and then 012 for the intermediate diff. Oh wow, we are really going down memory lane here. Skybolt.
My wife has a saddle with a bolt. The green one.
Secret Agent, you were on your own on that one. Special Agent, dude. Special Agent. That was the one. Secret Agent. Yeah. Right. So let's quickly transition over to the reality. What we've seen from that. Do you want me to roll your video, or do you want to do a bit of an intro?
Well, we can kind of start. Oh, this is the one I used, obviously, and it, despite what Stu says, this is prettier than his. But for me, this is, I went with a low pin. This is a ball that's got a slow cover on it. I tell you what, there you go. There's the shelf talker on it, but you can see in 16, basically the numbers are the same in 14, 15, 16. 2.48, most everybody it's 15 pounds, 2.49, 052 diff, so ball flares a lot, 018 asymmetry, which is about as much as you see these days. S84 response, which in the global line means it's a very strong cover, and this one's, it's going to be for heavy oil for sure. For those that like the Zen, like the X1, this is a ball that you're going to use more on the fresh and on heavier patterns in the front 20 feet. This one likes volume and is not afraid of it at all. So we rolled this here, and one of the surprises was this is just a medium house pattern, and there's some friction in this place at University Lanes in Denton. It is pro ambulane though, so and this is just a live game that we old man got loose a couple shots and went down there and started throwing shots, and so I'm sliding about 28 or so, and surprisingly, the ball has pretty good energy for a place that's not a super high volume house shot. So it's got some usability and some flexibility, more than I expected, to be honest, for a cover that's this strong. I get this one a little bit wide.
Yeah, I think the one thing I've noticed out of the proton physics, which I think is probably the most comparable ball to this one, is that even when I used it at Plano, which is another place that has a lot of friction, I felt like the proton physics is really more continuous than I expected it to be for such a strong ball. And I think that the reality definitely falls into that group, because I bowled over at Denton where you had this done, and
yeah,
they really do hook quite a bit over there. And like I say, you're not really having much trouble getting this to go around the corner, continue, which I think you've had problems in the past with some of the stronger balls.
Yeah, historically, when you get to big ASIM balls and things like that, like here, I go ahead and take a little step left. I move about 3 left and throw it a little slower, and from here on, basically, this ball goes through. Here's a shot with the Zen, just to give you a comparison. I moved back 3 right, and that's how much longer it is. I really expected that Zen to hook as much or maybe even more than this ball did, because there felt like there's quite a bit of friction on the lane, and so that's, in a comparison standpoint, the reality is going to hook probably with oil in the front 3 to 4 more for most players. It really does. It goes through them, and it's a long continuous shape on a pattern with a really sharp back end. That's where the Zen's going to stand out, and then it will overtake this ball.
So looking at the way you're throwing it, you're definitely getting your hand around this a little bit more to trying to get that shape to be as continuous as possible.
True. Yeah, I'm not rolling up the back of it here. This is not, things I do when I'm playing further to the right. And one of the things that has changed in the Zen is a ball that also allows me to do that, is some balls that really change directions down lane. But yeah, to get the ball to continue, it's around it. This ball is going to pick up in the middle, so I don't have to worry about if I throw it hard or if I spin it too much. It's going to pick up. It's really just about getting it to continue there. So, but the real surprise is, like John Wise says here, is just how controllable it is to be so strong, how continuous it is for me, which those long continuation windows is when balls get really good.
So there you go. The Zen looking like a starter ball. Now you've moved back about 5 right, you said?
Yeah, I end up moving 4 right, and then at this point, now this ball it's just so much cleaner to the spot all the way there. And so I get actually a pretty similar shape down lane, but it just gets there way easier. And so from a comparison, and again, just showing you, but just a low pin, and I did throw the VAL out per a Stu's suggestion here recently. I've cycled back around. I've not been a big fan of big asymmetrical balls for a while, and he made a suggestion. I was throwing some balls with Ryan, and they worked better for him too, and so this one also rolls a little better for me that way.
It's about a 4.5-inch pin on that one.
Yeah. My axis point's 4.5 over, 1 up these days. It's moved down about a 1/2 inch over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the pin to pap on this one was about 4.5. It was
it's really close to that. Yeah.
So
right in the bridge.
Yeah, I think the thing that's really noticeable watching you bowl on that is, and this is a pretty good tip for the people at home. When I'm bowling on house shots, as long as you've got enough speed, I feel like when you get to the last game on a house shot, actually moving up to a stronger ball and getting more in the oil is actually a pretty good tip. It seems counterintuitive that you should actually start with a slightly weaker ball and then go to a stronger ball. But if you can get into the oil, the strong balls give you the best of both worlds, because if you get it to the dry too quickly, it's way more likely to be smooth off the dry. And then if you get it in the oil, it's actually got a chance to catch that light hit. Whereas, if you're gone like something weaker, which is kind of what you would think as the last game of league, You get into that weaker ball, then you almost make the over-under even more because it responds so fast off the dry, and it has almost no chance if you get it only in the oil.
It's the most common mistake that I see happen regularly in league. And I bowled more league with this pandemic. I bowled more league than I have in decade. But game one, the scores are always super high. You know, every proprietor wants the lanes to be easy. They're really blended. You get a little right, it's fine. You get a left, it's fine. You get a lot left sometimes, it's fine. But game two, everybody piles into one spot there, and all of a sudden this just it goes from being, 10 or 12 to 1 to like 15 or 16. You see that friction, like Stu says, you go down to a ball that's shinier, more responsive, and then when it hits the dry, it hooks even more. But when it hits the oil, it also responds to that oil, and so now you go even lighter. And now you don't know what to do. And if you're a player that really struggles with game one being good and game two is always your bad game, and then you hang around until the fronts break down and blend that out, that's when you need to actually, like Stu says, you ball up in game two. And this is one of the reasons why AJ Chapman is now bowling so good. Instead of just moving left and trying to overhook it all the time, he's gone to bigger balls that control the lane better and using more speed, and he's a strong dude. And now he's not going through those transitions where he's getting lost in the lane as much. And his rev rate's still 5 1/4, and he's throwing it on an average at 20 1/2. He's throwing as hard as the two-handers are. So he's catching more hits, but mostly he's just hitting the pocket more often. A little flatter, but it doesn't really matter. He's losing 1 out of 10 hits that way, but hitting the pocket once or twice more a game.
Yeah, exactly. And like a flat 10 is way better than a couple of 2-8-10s.
Yeah, 100%. Walter proved a long time ago. His carry percentage was maybe one of the lowest of the guys.
Yeah, just listen to him.
that was on tour, but his overall strike percentage was the highest on tour because he was hitting the pocket 9 times a game. And the guys that are striking 90%, say Tommy Jones was striking 90% of the time when he hit the pocket, maybe more. But he was hitting the pocket 70%. Walter was hitting 90% and striking 70.
Yeah, it was
75. And then Walter, it's easier to be a great spare shooter when you're shooting at 1 all the
time. James says, do you both drill your own equipment? Yes. When you drill, like I can talk for myself here. When you drill as many balls as I do, you kind of piss pro shop operators off if you want to be in there that often. In the long run, getting your own rig is by far the best option. Yeah,
I was fortunate. I bought a press off Tom Wicker here in Dallas, and because spending all afternoon in a pro shop, working around customers and that when you've been on the road for a couple hundred days already, just seemed wrong. So once I was able to get that, I could put the boys to bed. If it was long enough ago, that was a deal, and then go out and work from 10 to midnight and get everything done and not have to not disturb the time I had at home.
I was about to say, when you have a mansion like Barnes, you see, you can be far enough away. When you live in a small pool house like myself, you've got to do it when Brady's at school.
I don't think we want to compare square footages at the moment.
Don't want to wake him up. Cody's got a serious question here, though. Yes. How much stronger is reality versus the Axiom? Cover seems somewhat similar.
I think that's probably not far off from that standpoint. Axiom is symmetrical versus I think the engine is slightly bigger than the reality. And so it will pick up a little sooner and probably be overall a little smoother. I see the Axiom being able to have a little bit more response time overall.
Yeah, for me personally, Cody, I actually use the Axiom with a little bit of polish on it. For what my eyes like, the Axiom is a little slow when it's dull for me personally. For my wife, it's not. Like, it seems to respond better, but with my matchup, with the roll and everything else, I don't really have a gap for a dull Axiom very often. I'd use a phase 2 or I'd use like a proton physics or something like that. I don't really have that gap, but once I shined it, I found that I could speed the motion up, get it a little sharper down the lane. And then it was a really useful piece for me being shiny. So like for me personally, I would think that the reality is just more the movement down in the last 30 feet of the lane is what's going to separate them. The reality is going to be more dynamic. It's going to be more continuous. Whereas I feel like the axiom is very much something that you're going to keep online rather than something that you're going to be able to open up the angle with when it's done. John, no problem. I'm glad we clarified some stuff for you. It's funny because Frankie wasn't very good on the house shot, and I was chatting to him a little bit, and we had this same conversation. And then the next weekend, he bowled fantastic, and he goes, "Why didn't anybody just tell me that I needed to use the Emerald the first game and then ball up to the Rubicon? House shots are so easy now." He goes, "I just kept following it left and wondered why my reaction was so bad. Man, the pitch is so clear now."
Yeah, it goes to show you that, I mean, we're all environmental. And Frankie just doesn't bowl on a lot of house shots. And I haven't been great on house shots for a while because I stopped bowling very much on local tournaments and those house patterns. Now that the kids are out and about, I'm bowling a lot more of those tournaments, and I've gotten better at them again. Like you said, though, you end up using way stronger balls and moving into the puddle, or versus just trying to ball down or trap it against it, which is what you do on tour at different times. And even somebody as great as Frankie is can get trapped because basically the chessboard has changed when he goes to bowl league, and what he does on tour doesn't work there.
No, Todd, I actually put real polish on it. I use the Storm. Oh God, I'm gonna get shouted at now. What's it called? Extra Shine. Extra Shine. That's what I used on it.
Yeah, that's what I used. Also.
Sorry about that. William says, "How much difference is between an MVP at 2000?" I'm guessing you're talking about the MVP, the original MVP, and the Rubicon UC2. I would say there's a pretty big difference. Like for me, the MVP was like just above, say, the Hustles, whereas the Rubicon for me is just below like the big balls, like the strong balls, the big ASIM, realities, protons, X1s, like it's in that range. So I would say there's probably at least 3 or 4 balls in the bag before I'd get to an MVP. Everyone makes fun of me. I can average 220 on sport and 180 on house. Funny you should say that. I bowl league in the same league as Robert Lawrence down here in Austin. And I say that Robert Lawrence is the only man in America who averages more at nationals than he does at league. I regularly refer to him as the world's worst league bowler.
Yeah, soft speed, a relatively medium to high rev rate with a lot of axis rotation is a tough combination in league these days because the average league shot is somewhere between 12 and 15 to 1. And so you just have constant overreaction.
Friend of the show, Brian Poga, says, "I've gotten better on sports shots the last couple of years. I've got worse on house. Any suggestions?" Yep. Listen to the last 20 minutes of the show. You're probably using balls that are too quick. And I know that you have a big love affair with your IQ pearls, whether that be the gold one or the green one. They're not the ones I'd want to attack league with, especially once you start getting better at like rolling the ball and stuff. You probably need to take a step left and ball up a little bit, especially if you're bowling at Highland. Get something that'll smooth out that kind of over-under on the dry. That would be the direction I would go, especially after game 1.
So there's, on average, 26, 27 mils on a house pattern. 80% of that is between 12 and 12.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to do that with a shiny, low flare, super responsive ball, you're just asking for the miss left two pin combination and the miss right big 4.
Yeah. When you ball up on house shots, do you keep similar? Yeah. I mean, I might actually even move my break point a little further right, depending on how much I move in. because it's going to come off. It's so much smoother.
I have two answers. One, in a place like where it melts, where the surface is good, I agree. You get around where the changes in the surface is, you just go around that. The place I bowl league at is 20-plus-year-old HPL, and so as it goes on, I will play that dominant area in the track because that's the consistent part of the lane.
Yeah.
And eliminate the part that when you get it right, it may overbounce or not, and I'll just play the whole with the track area being the consistent part.
How does the Rubicon compare to the Zen? Like, if you actually go back and watch this, Andy, at the end of the video, I throw the Zen. For me, the Zen is a little earlier and it's smoother. I can play a little closer to the friction with the Zen. And it's obviously not, I use the phrase dynamic, but it doesn't make a stronger, like, because the core is smaller, it doesn't make that really quick move that the UC2 does. So I can keep the Zen a little closer to the head pin if I want to. Whereas the UC2 is much better when I have like separate my lay down and the break point. So that's really kind of how I see those two. I think the Zen is that I probably wouldn't use the UC2 and the Zen in the same block. I wouldn't be looking for those shapes like together.
Yeah, one's to be pretty angular and steep and get it back, and the other one's basically to be strong in the mid lane and
yeah,
pop
I mean,
back. So,
yeah, for me, if I'm using the Zen is an ideal ball to come off that kind of idle axiom phase 2 type balls. When you want something that's still pretty strong, but like those phase 2s are a little slow down the lane. They're not really getting through the pins. Whereas the UC2 is a ball that is going to come off, say, like a proton physics or something when you're actually playing more shape and you need something that's going to dig in a little more. That's when I would use the UC2. So
cover with big guts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense, because that's kind of how I see the balls. Like, I put them in groups of what I would use, like, you know, bang, bang, bang. Like, these balls are good together. So, like, when we go to a tournament, I know that if I'm using, say, a proton physics, I know that balls off that are going to be good. So I know that my UC2 is going to be in there. I know that the X1 is going to be in there. Like, balls off that makes sense for me. But if I go to a tournament and the first ball I can use is say the X1, and I'm not really shaping it that much, that's the one. I'm going to have things like phase 2s and idles just below it. And then obviously Axiom Pearl, Zen, maybe High Road Pearl. They're the transitions that I'm going to go through. Jack says, how's the UC2 compare to the nuclear cell? The UC2 is way more angular than the nuclear cell. The nuclear cell, although it was pearl, for me was quite rolly. Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. That was actually quite smooth for a pearl. I actually found it to be more useful for me personally when I had more surface on that one. And it was like basically like a cleaner strong ball, if that makes sense. Like, it didn't really want to change direction hard. It was one you could keep closer to the head pin.
Serious question here. Which of the Williams household has earned the most money bowling in 2021?
I'm still ahead, Russell, because I came second at the Snowman. So
they thought they got you.
Tina has a bigger check, though. The USB-C check is going to be bigger than that, but
Greg, I thought, asked a good question here. Based off what, for both of us, this is the first time we drilled one. Well, I guess, I don't know for you. For me, this is the first one I drilled. Based off of what I thought it would be, a slower ball, I went ahead and drilled it likewise with a lower pin and tried to make it smooth. Because it does continue, for me, I probably will drill a taller one and put it kind of in my usual kind of favorite position, right about there, which is just a little over 5-inch pin, and see how much more it does continue and whether it allows me to do more things with it or if it eliminates some of the things that I think this one's really good at.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm probably not, because I drilled about 6 different layouts on Rubicons. And by far the most useful layout for me was this layout that I used on the UC2. This is on the previous Rubicons. And for me, I have so many balls to choose from right now. I don't really want, like, once I find a good gap for one, unless it's something like the X1 where I know I've got so many uses for it, I don't really need another layout because it fits a gap for me and I know what it does. And I'm like, I'm happy with it. I don't really want to start messing around again with more layouts on it. In regards to what you were just saying about the reality, I think that if you carry like a pretty big tournament arsenal, like obviously me and Chris do, I think that the proton physics might be a better option for something that's more angular down the lane. So for what Chris was talking about with the reality, he might actually find more joy going to a proton with that layout to make the gap a little bigger between the two balls. Because I think from what I've seen, the proton is slightly cleaner than the reality, and it's more off the spot down the lane. So for me, the proton physics is a really useful ball, but I can't really use it to go straighter because it comes off the spot a little hard. So at the minute, the ball that I use in that gap to go straighter on those higher volume patterns is the UFO, the Roto Grip UFO. So I think that from what I've seen, a lot of people talking about, the reality is kind of going to fit between the UFO and the proton physics. All of them are super strong balls, but I think that the UFO is probably the slowest response of all of our big balls. And the reality is kind of in between. And I would say the proton is probably the strongest overall of the 3 balls, like the most overall hook as well. But I think it's probably the most angular of the 3 of those balls. I've seen a lot of people talking about the X1, putting it in a category along with the reality and the proton physics. For me, that's not correct. The X1 is nowhere near as strong as those balls, nowhere near as early.
But say if you're in Houston, a place where the house shots basically hook, that's like you said, that's probably the ball you start with a lot of times. It's the strongest ball you can throw. Mm-hmm. Those lower volume, higher friction house shots.
Yeah, and even when we're bowling on, say, 38, 39, those kind of medium patterns on tour, it's not very often that we get to use the like proton physics or the reality like to start with. It's going to be on those sort of like 42 foot plus patterns that we're going to, or flipping it completely the other way. I could see you being able to use something like that ball on one of the shorter patterns.
Yeah.
Where you control.
At our Players Championship in Garland, there was friction in the front of the lane. And really all the big balls were out of play, regardless of length of pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I threw the proton physics for about 5 minutes in the practice session and then put them both back in the car. Like, same with the Omega Crux. No chance. I think I used a shot, and like I think me and you, whether I don't know in hindsight whether we were right or not, but we used a lot of weaker balls and a lot of polish in the end.
Yeah, and Frankie used a Hustle EBR a lot.
Yeah, he used that quite a bit. Yeah, and then of course
he tests a couple times, and this is its own episode by itself, so not going to go into deep, but I want to acknowledge that it's a great question. When you don't know what you're bowling on, what's the process figuring out where to play and what to use. And his problem is overshelling and playing too far right, which that's how I start to figure out the pattern. But pretty quickly, when your ball flat tens, you have to ball down. That's the tell that there's too much friction in the front of the lane. Lots of times, the hardest thing to tell, no matter what your level is whether your ball is going too long or is it losing energy in the front. And so that's why starting with overshelling and playing right, I like that system because it makes it most likely that when that's flat tenning, it's wearing out, and you just keep going down until it goes too long and doesn't hook. And you just have to go through the process quickly if you only have 4 to 6 shots like in the league session. But
I do think that one of the best tips,
ball and then bowling down.
one of the best tips for that is to, if you're ever at a point where you're not sure whether the ball is not strong enough or it's rolling out, or it's blowing up, it's just it's too strong. One of the best tips ever is to use a ball that's a couple of steps down, and if that hooks more, even if it doesn't hook enough, you immediately know that first ball was burning up. The problem is if you go to a stronger ball than the one you're using and it still doesn't hook, you haven't really clarified in your mind whether it's actually burning up more or if it's just the lane is actually that tight. So
yeah, it's a fantastic. In that video, I was throwing the reality. I threw the Zen up against it. I felt like there was enough early hook that the Zen would then probably out hook a ball that's stronger. It didn't, which told me there was still plenty of oil in the front of the lane.
Yeah,
that ball as much or more, I know my ball's wearing out, and for sure, because that Zen's at least 2 steps down from. So what Stu says is spot on.
Like just when you're in a tournament and you'd like going through the stages of panic, that to me is the best way to process it quickly. Is if you're in the indecisive stage, it's way better to waste that one frame with the weaker ball and it not hook, because then at least your brain's completely convinced that that's the issue. The one issue, the worst thing you can do is to constantly keep going to strong balls, them not hook. Then you run out of strong balls. And then you're like, oh shit, I should have gone to the weaker ball. And then you're 3 frames down the road.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a chance for you to get on Belmo's good side or not.
For me, the trend is one that's, I think, got a little bit lost in the wash with the whole people not bowling so much. I had one that I used quite a bit, and then we got a lot of other balls come out, and then we went to the PBA League, and I drilled a new one at the PBA League that I actually used, and for me, it's a step down off the Axiom Pearl. It's a little cleaner, and it's a bit more responsive than an Axiom Pearl, especially with stronger layups. They're a little closer than I expected them to be. But when I got back, I didn't have one because, the one I had was done and the other one was left on the PBA truck. So I actually ordered one again this week because I think that we're going to, especially the World Series, is going to a place where it really hooks. So I think that that's going to be one that I can add to the bag because for me personally, I find that the high road Pearl, the lane needs to be really transitioned for me to be able to use that ball because of how clean it is. And I think that the lower RG in that trend is something that gives you that kind of in between. So it'll fit in between, say, like the Axiom Pearl and the high road Pearl. So that's where I see it fitting. I think that, Simo made it look fantastic. Well, like someone commented on our show, everybody in America but Belmo was cheering for Chris Kelso, but Belmo was Simo's #1 fan.
Here's a quick one. The new ball looks amazing. Does take surface changes? I have not done any. But to answer your second part of the question, if you put polish on it, would it be a little more responsive? Generally speaking, no. Slower covers, when you polish them, just go longer and stay slower. And so it will clear the front, and so it'll save a little more energy, but it's not going to suddenly make it from a archy ball to a angular ball by putting polish on it.
One thing that I've noticed with the storm covers, that tends to work better with the symmetrical balls.
Okay.
So for me, the Axiom does exactly what he's saying. Like the Axiom becomes more angular down the lane when I put polish on it.
Okay.
But with the bigger balls, I think what you've said is exactly correct. With the big asymmetrical cores and the cover, it's like that shine isn't enough to take away the characteristics very often. But like when you've got something that's not quite as big core-wise,
yeah,
I think that definitely does that.
Yeah. And like, so you get in the 80s for our numbering system, and I think that holds true. As you say that, I have fluxes that are in the 72 range, and the difference, dull, they smooth out a little bit, and then shiny, they actually get quite angular. So,
I'm going to post a link in the video. If all you guys could sign up, we'd really appreciate it. It is Storm's mailing list. We have our own link for it to show that you people care about what we've got to say. It says it didn't. Anyway, I'll post it. If you could sign up for that, we'd really appreciate it. It keeps you up to date with all of Storm's products coming out. Storm Roto Grip 900 Global. It gives you some heads up on some interesting tips over what you should do with the balls. So yeah, it's definitely something we'd appreciate you signing up for.
Very much so. Hey, Eddie, good to see you. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about the reality. Clint, what are your feelings about Thunderbolt lanes? Which part? One part I like considerably more than the other part. Thunderbolt is where the old arena was, one of the original arenas. In that arena, they pretty much have almost the original lanes. They hook somewhere about your third step. In the actual main part of the center, the bigger 60 lane part, you have Pro-Am Lane, and after their latest install adjustment, they became very, very high scoring. And so, that part is pretty user friendly. The other part is pretty user friendly if you're a port sider. Yeah, because that's the only part of the lane that isn't completely chewed up at this point. They just have 30-year-old panels in there, and they hook super, super early. And so the guys who manage that do pretty well there. Tom Smallwood doesn't struggle so much. AJ Johnson likes it just fine. But for the most part, everybody else's reaction changes pretty significantly when they get over there.
And we haven't even begun to discuss the other side.
Yeah.
The third side.
Oh, yeah. I've never bowled on the third side where the carnivals and the clowns and the animals are.
Yeah, that's where Oscar honed his skills for throwing over a bar stool.
Well,
that's very kind of you, John. Thanks. We think so too. How would you adjust the High Road Max? See, here's a problem for us. The High Road Max is going to be one of the hardest balls for us to give people an idea of what it does, because the High Road weight block is so different in 16, and both me and Chris throw 16. And so for me, the High Road Max isn't going to be massive. I'm saying this now. It isn't going to be massively different for me than an Axiom, because the numbers aren't that different, and it's the NEX cover. So I'll be fascinated to see, and I'll drill it, and I'll probably drill it the same as my Axiom and leave it dull. And I might actually find that I use the High Road Max as a stronger ball than the Axiom, which is completely not the way it will be in 15 pounds.
Right.
But with if you're into the numbers, the High Road numbers are 252.058 in 16 and 257.046 in 15. So they're massively different. So the High Road weight block, for as amazing as it's been, 16-pound guys don't see the same reaction out of it as 15-pound guys. It's just the way it is.
Well, we have a convert here, and he's in the process of switching all gear to Storm Roto Global. EBI for most all things, with the Web Tour being his favorite.
IQ Tour is the answer then.
Yeah, the IQ Tour is the closest. I actually watched this gentleman bowl a pretty good set with a Rubicon last weekend. It was probably on the highest end for him from that standpoint. Most everything else is going to be more angular than that Web Tour. But yeah, low flare ball, that C4 is in that range with that Web Tour. IQ Tours are going to be in the range of that. That's probably your closest bridge there.
Well, the Web Tour, I believe it's the blue one he's talking about, is called Tour, and it's blue. And it came out about 5 years after the IQ Tour. Which one were they trying to copy? Spoiler alert. Somebody, let's hope so. RIP to the Storm server after we shared it. I'm sure they'll cope.
Yeah.
Kenny, yes, of course, me and Chris will be at the TOC. Hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Kenny, Pete Weber's biggest fan. Maybe the best fan of this PBA tour. Had an original
on that one, Brian.
Down for my VAL. Really excited for the max to the leading of weight holes.
I'll be interested. Let us know how that goes.
All right.
The cover on the max is so much stronger than the cover on the original high road. So, yeah, we'll see. From my understanding, it's going to be kind of more high road nano than high road. So I'm actually going to do a video. I've still got some high road nanos here undrilled. I'm going to do the Darren Tang thing. I'm going to drill a ball that nobody's seen in forever. And I'm going to match it up to the high road max. We'll do the same layout. We'll take them out. I think that's the most comparable ball. That's a quick plug. Darren Tang's YouTube page. He's got a pretty cool video with the reality, the proton physics, and the X1. If you check that out, that's kind of interesting. I like him. I'm not liking him enough to do a link in the description, but I'm sure you can find it.
That seems fair. But it is a great breakdown, and it's a chance to see all three balls together, which is something you don't see a lot of with.
I believe he's talking about the high road max. The high road max is bright green. So, sorry. So I said, so all roadish. I expect the high road max to be much stronger than the all road, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question you were looking for?
It wasn't really a question, but James Graham saw the TV show that they showed a Snickers logo. Did they become they did not become the title sponsor, but they became a sponsor. Guaranteed Rate actually became a title sponsor. So actually what's gotten lost in all the Kelso, ruined their whole story by being so attention grabbing, but we got a title sponsor and another sponsor that was not endemic, not in the bowling industry, which is honestly the first time in quite a while that we've gotten a big time sponsor outside of our arena, and so that's great news. And a company like Snickers obviously gets attention from other places. If I'm looking to sponsor, it's part of the deal. Hey, well, what are they seeing? Well, and let's hope they can build on some momentum. So we got some players that are playing in different arenas than we could play in before. So let's hope it keeps going forward. Best ball for house shot, Sasba. For me, it would be a Flux. It's my Sasba ball. Pin down, drill just like this one, actually. Other than that, I don't know. You'd have to ask Jim Stevens or Joe LaCroix probably after that. Works best. Yeah, I guess Waxahachie's coming up though soon if you're bowling that, Royce. And you and I will be breaking in pretty much together because I have not bowled anything outside of the team ones and one doubles one with Anthony back like the first week we got back into bowling. So let's answer a few more questions, then we're going to wrap up. How do I like the Flux? How do you like the Flux more than the Flux Pearl? Well, the Flux rolls better for me.
I'm not quite sure. I think you said
probably not what you meant.
Why?
But yeah, because it's a big asymmetrical ball, it actually makes it quicker, and all it makes it is go forward faster for me. Where the regular Flux, especially 16-pounder, ends up being a more rounded shape, and the 15. Yeah. So for me, they both actually they continue better in the solid version versus the pearl version for me.
I saw it live. Didn't need any reruns.
Well, and depending on how far you go back, I might be the one upset. So, yeah, there's a little.
There was a pretty good Baker game a few years ago. If you go back and look at that one, we enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
If we want to do trips down memory lane.
Yeah, Todd, sorry. Yeah, I across the board for the most part, I think the Flux Pearl actually it was probably what it was supposed to be. It was a little quicker, but out of that big of an engine, they weren't looking for quicker so much as just more continuation. It made the window shorter, which made it less usable for a long period of time.
I think Rash was about the only person I saw who really took to the Flux Pearl.
Yeah, and he just didn't. I don't think we had any originals left on the truck, and that's a guy that's not afraid to put holes in the ball.
Yeah, he could be dangerous now. He's got like 3 brands to choose from. He already had a lot of balls.
I had no idea how much him and Dom were alike. So,
yeah, drill. Okay, guys. Well, we hope that you've enjoyed that. This was our first foray into doing this style. Let us know if you do decide to choose a UC2 or a Reality, having watched this. Send Storm a Facebook message. They seem to like that. They seem to they like to hear where the recommendations came from. So yeah, and if you have any ideas, we're going to do this once a month. We're probably going to do it a little earlier in the month next month because we're going out on tour. So I think that we'll probably do something with the Insight and maybe a High Road Max. Is this the format you liked? Kind of deal?
Yeah, if there's information you'd like, whether it be styles of players, those kind of things. And we'll do our best to give you the information you want and cover it as best we can. So
yeah, let us know in the comments which balls you'd like to see compared for the next comparison. I already said it with my High Road Max thing. I'm probably going to drill a High Road Nano off it as a comparison, but with the I would think, just spitballing right now, that probably the ball that I will compare the Insight off is the Rubicon, being as that's kind of Storm's foray into that style of weight block. We don't like the Rubicon for me isn't really comparable to almost anything else. Just because the core is so unique. So the Insight is kind of the same style of build. So let us know.
Sounds great, guys. Hey, once again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, if you support those small businesses in those bowling centers, you can go to beefandbarnsey.com to get apparel, T-shirts, jerseys, soon to come hoodies, sweatpants, joggers, as some people refer them to.
Yeah.
And other apparel. Go to there. And as always, if you have a choice and you can, please support the sponsors who support us. Storm, Roto Grip, Niner Global, Vice, Turbo, Coolwick, 3D Shoes, Master Bowlersmart, and Mark Baker Bowling. Thanks again for tuning in, and join us again next week as we come back to you with, I'm sure, more exciting tournament roundup news and the player of the minute. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. God bless.